Hello and welcome to another stream from Wake Vortex. We have a very murky day here in Echo Golf Hotel, which is Bournemouth in the south of the UK. We're looking at the main and only runway here in Bournemouth, and down on the ramp we see our aircraft today for our short flight to Manchester, Echo Golf Charlie Charlie. The flight's in VR. That's a way I always fly, and many of you have seen the stream before will have seen that I normally use X-Plane 12, and since Fenix brought out its Block 2 variant in Flight Sim 2020, I've been very fond of the Airbus A320. It's getting better and better all the time, and for me, Flight Simulator 2020 has its faults, as we all know. Let's not get into that discussion, but in VR, it is a way better experience all round than X-Plane 12, I'm afraid to say. Even though I love X-Plane 12, FS2020 is doing it so much better right now. Hopefully the new changes to X-Plane 12 will help, but let's see. So today we are going to try and do a flight and explain some of the things that I use in the cockpit of my Flight Simulator virtual reality flight, some of which you may have seen and some of which you may not have seen. So hopefully this will be of some benefit to you. So let's get a little further down towards the aircraft. Not a great day, by the way, as you can see around you. Bit of a murky sky. And there's our old aircraft in the British Midland livery. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, British Midland was a very popular livery in the UK, and many people loved the airline, me being one of them. Flew on it many, many times, much missed. And there she is on the tarmac. So we're going to get going here, and I'll try and explain as I go what is going on. First thing to say is, for those who are familiar with the Fenix, is it Fenix or Phoenix? I would say Phoenix, but I've heard people call it Fenix. Let's go for Phoenix, shall we? People who are familiar with the Phoenix will know that in Block 2 they brought out very, very good GSX integration for all of the ground services, and it's all handled within the Fenix EFB, which we're looking at here. You will find that I've actually turned all of that off for a very good reason, and that's that I'm still using an app which came out before they did that integration, which is called Fenix 2 GSX. Now, the reason I use that app and not the Fenix's own built-in integration is two reasons, really. One is Fenix GSX gives me a bit more flexibility, so you can determine timings when various things happen. You can set up parameters a little bit differently than you could if you didn't use it. So that's one of the main reasons that I use Fenix 2 GSX. The other reason I use Fenix 2 GSX is, and this is a big bonus, that it allows the volume controls, in other words, these things here in the Fenix, to control outside applications. So, for example, VHF1 will control vPilot, my VATSIM client. You can then control with the internal button the volume of the GSX trucks and things around you, and even if you want to, you can add extra things onto, for example, HF1 or HF2. You could even control the level of Microsoft Flight Simulator if you wanted to from this audio control panel. So you'll see that as we go. So that's the first thing. We're using Fenix to GSX, and the first thing you do when you board the Fenix, let's get this going because it does take a while, is to import your flight plan from SimBrief. So let's do that. Here we are, Bournemouth to Manchester, and we're 27 minutes away from departure. That little jolt there was telling me that Fenix to GSX has connected, it's repositioned the aircraft, and that'll start doing its thing. So the first thing that will happen will be that the stairs will turn up in just a moment. So let me explain some of the things in the cockpit. Some you'll be familiar with, some you won't. This one here, everyone probably knows. Navigraph charts, fantastic. What can I say that hasn't already been said about Navigraph charts? Works beautifully in VR, and it's just a must-have, basically, in Flight Simulator 2020. Works way better in FS2020 because they've got their own app for it, whereas with X-Plane 12, you've kind of got to fiddle about a bit with it, which is not ideal. So Navigraph, great app. Use it for everything. So let's set that up. We have imported our flight plan, which is from Bournemouth to Manchester. We've got the ground chart here, which is pretty straightforward. It's an LVOS arrival into Manchester. We'll put the arrival runway in just a moment. I also like to have the ground charts prepared for Manchester, but let's do all that once we get things going here. You can see outside the trucks are all arriving. That's Fenix to GSX doing its thing. Fueling trucks arrived, catering trucks have arrived, and the stairs have arrived. So that's all good. That shows it's all working. And for those who've never used Fenix to GSX, it's by no means a must-have. It's just that I like the extra functionality, and particularly the audio, which you'll see quite shortly. Let's do the biggie first of all here. Open kneeboard. This is something that I've talked about before in my X-Plane 12 streams. It sits outside of the simulator, so you can use it in any sim. It was originally designed for DCS to be literally that, kneeboards which sit virtually on your leg as you would in a normal aircraft. But here you have a virtual kneeboard, which you can see here in front of you. What you're looking at is a PDF file that I've created so I can take notes on what ATC are telling me for the departure. For those of you who can't work out how you could possibly take notes, well, you need one extra thing. The app itself is free, Open Kneeboard, and you can use that to display things in the cockpit. No problem at all, without any expense at all. But if you want to write stuff down, you can buy a very inexpensive tablet. I've bought a Wacom tablet, which is sitting in front of me. It's tiny, it's about the size of a small library book, and it comes with a pen. And the piece of genius is, with that pen, I can write things down. So squiggle, squiggle, squiggle down at the bottom there, and by press a little button on the pen, I can also rub things out. So absolutely brilliant. So I can take all my notes I need straight in VR. Complete and utter game changer. And if it wasn't enough, you can have multiple kneeboards in the cockpit, and you can switch between various pages. If I was to just pick up the pen, for example, I can zoom in and out on that, and I can move the map around. So everything is interactable in the cockpit. Some apps work better than others. Some are not so great. It's a little bit of potluck. Here's one that works brilliantly. This is an app called Sky Demon, which is a real-world flying app, which I use. There you go. I can interact with that map beautifully. Zoom it in, zoom it out. Other things I've got in here, there's Auto FPS. We'll come back to that in a moment. There's Sky Dolly for recording. I can set that recording by just pressing the record button. Back to departures. So you may have seen a little window pop up there a moment ago. Let me get it actually back on this page so it's easier to see. This is the other killer application which I've literally only just discovered. It's called FS2020, Flight Simulator First Officer, and it works with many aircraft, including the Fenix, which we've got it in today. It's not expensive. It's under 20 UK pounds, I think around 15. Correct me if I'm wrong there. And what it enables you to do is have what it says on the tin, a virtual first officer who isn't sitting there next to you. There's nobody physically there, as you can see, but you actually have a working first officer who will do a number of things. They will do what's called a flow in an aircraft, which is a list of things that they will go through that is their responsibility. So, for example, putting power on, getting the IRSs aligned, putting the lights on, all of those things which they will do as a flow. That's their job in the aircraft to do that. So that's one of the things they'll do. They'll also do a checklist, which is read out as it would be in the actual aircraft, and you'll get a response from the captain, i.e. you. And every one of those items on the flow and on the checklist can be altered by you, the user. So you can say, okay, I don't want the first officer to turn the batteries on. I'm going to make the captain do that. You can just make that very simple change, and that will happen. It's incredibly flexible. Let me just connect it to Flight Simulator. Okay, we've now connected it to Flight Simulator. As you can see, the buttons now turn green, and some things have changed here. Our flows have changed to cockpit prep flow, cockpit prep checklist. At the bottom, you'll see here, we're on the ground and we're flying in a Fenix A320. Sim brief plan downloaded. Database is available. It's not a cargo flight. It uses FICIPC, by the way. That's checked. You don't need the paid version. You can use the free version. And company detected false. That means I'm not running a company. You can run a pseudo company and keep track of your money in and money out. That's the thing that doesn't really interest me. It's the other bits that I love about this program. And because it knows your flight plan, because it's talking to SimBrief, then you can do some great things in here. So, for example, I could go to here, which is a little weather icon. I can see my departure weather and my arrival weather, no problem at all. I can go here, and this is my flight plan. So Bournemouth to Manchester, and you can change things in here to your will. Now, that's the one drawback in VR. This is not a VR program. It's only being seen by us now in VR because I've got the beauty of open kneeboard. Ordinarily, FSFO is not VR compatible. There isn't a VR version of it. But this enables you to bring it into the cockpit and use it with only one slight gotcha, and that is that you can't use these drop-down boxes to change things in VR because that effectively makes a new window which would need to be captured. That's a kind of minor detail because you really don't need to do very much in this window once your flight plan's done, except maybe change the V-speeds and just check that everything else is sorted out. So I tend to just quickly do that outside of VR and then pop back in again once I've done it. So that's that. There's many things. I'm not going to go through every feature on here. There's some great videos to show you how to use this, but basically you'll see it in action. Back to the home page. So what we can do is we can actually press the buttons here to make these things happen, or we can talk to FSFO. It does speech recognition. It's something I've not delved into yet. I use an alternative method, which is to use the joystick button to advance the flow and checklists, if you like. So you'll see that in action in just a moment. So that's a brilliant program. Really, really good. And we better get on because our passengers are boarding. Blimey, look at them all. What a motley crew. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press my advance button, basically, on a joystick, and cockpit prep flow will start. That means the first officer will get on with their job.
Starting pre-flight flow.
There we go. So they'll do the safety check quickly in the cockpit. They'll then... There we are. It's very nice of her. Now turn the batteries on. We'll look up here and you'll see her doing the actual work so you can get on with other stuff. And she tells you what she's doing here. It says waiting for next action. That can either be a wait, so something is starting up, for example, could be a wait for an action from the captain. Everything is completely changeable. GPU, doors. Now the things in purple are responsibilities of the captain. So they are things that I've told it that I want to take care of. So fuel and payload, the init B page and the perf pages of the McDo, and the IFR clearance from VATSIM. Obviously she can't do that. What she does do though is the initial loading of the McDo, which is brilliant. She'll go off, get the flight plan, you'll see it in just a moment. And at the moment we're doing self-tests. There we go, 2 seconds for self-tests. Doors, checking the doors. Now going to do the brightness of these things here if they needed altering. There you go. Look at that. That's not me doing that. That's the first officer doing that. And upper ECAM brightness, lower ECAM brightness. The things in green are done. The things in white are next on the list to be done. The things in purple are things for me to do, and the things at the bottom there, you can see them flicking through as we go. 4 seconds until cockpit voice recorder test is completed. You can skip any of these by assigning another button to a skip function. So we'll see that in use in just a moment. So all the tests are now being done, which is fantastic. Our passengers are getting on board. In fact, they look like they're all nearly here. That was rather quick. That poor old lady at the back is taking her time. Yeah, so that's the things I use in the cockpit. That's a fire test going on. APU, engine 1, and engine 2 in just a moment. Now you'll see here now, these 2 volume controls have lit up. So VHF1 will now become my VATSIM level. So for those familiar with VATSIM, you use a program called vPilot. This is now going to be the level of vPilot, which is incredibly useful. This here is the level of GSX, should you need to turn that up or down. Now this one you know about. This comes with the Fenix and Fenix and gives you the internal cabin announcements, which will keep nice and low. This button here has a use as well with Fenix or GSX. You can call things with this button, like the pushback. We'll see that again in just a moment. So that's a kind of quick tour around the things that we use in VR. This in front of us here is the one we haven't talked about, which is VSR VATSIM Radio. Great program. Dave, the author of this, was lucky enough to be on the beta team back when he started this, and he's done such a lot of work and is still continually changing this. It basically is a superb interface between you and VATSIM. So it knows our flight plan if you tell it the flight plan. So we've got up here the flight plans. We can import the flight plan either from VATSIM or from SimBrief. We'll import the SimBrief flight plan. It now knows we're going from Bournemouth to Manchester. It would automatically grab the weather for us. There we go. Weather there. So let's go for the Bournemouth weather. And there's the TAF. So that's very helpful. These are all the controllers who are kind of centres or approaches at the top. They put those at the top, and then underneath you'll have individual airfields near you, and it will show you their controllers. So if you open Bournemouth up, for example, by pressing this little icon, you see they have an ATIS. So that's what they're for. You'll see Manchester, for example, they have a tower and an ATIS. Now, one of the great things about this is you can tune those particular people simply by doing a few clicks. So let's just size this correctly. As I say, Dave is working on this all the time, and he's just adding great stuff. I know that in the next version you're going to be able to do a PDC, talking directly to VATSIM for clearances via a text message. At the moment, that one of the great things is, as I mentioned, that you can now tune these radio frequencies without going through the knobs down here in the Fenix. So for example, if I wanted to put London control, in fact, let's show you the map first. So here's the map, and that shows us there with our flight plan, and it shows any controllers around us, which is rather good. So you can see now we're in an area called EGCC 129.43. These are other aircraft around us. Okay, so if we, for example, wanted to put London South Centre into our COM radios, we can click here on the COM button for London South Centre, and that says, do you want it in COM active, COM 1 standby, COM 2 active, or COM 2 standby? Let's have it in COM 1 standby. And that puts that into there, which is fantastic. So that's ready to go. There's Unicom. Let's put that in COM 1 active. Bang. Job done. So very, very useful. Tons more this does. We could do a whole video on this. In fact, I may do that another day, but this has changed the way VATSIM works for me. I'm not going to use that phrase game changer because everybody does. Now there we are. Now if you look here now, she's off on a walk around. So basically, while we've been blabbering on, the co-pilot has been very busy programming the McDo, her own McDo on the right hand side here. So she's loaded the route. She has grabbed the winds, and she has basically told us that everything is ready to go except the SIDS and stars. So she wants me to do that, which I'm happy to do. In fact, I set it up that way. So let's put that in. Let's grab our flight plan. Oh, here, by the way, you're familiar with this, I'm sure. 42 flow wheel. A lot of people use this. I think it's great. Works brilliantly in VR. I'll just hide it at the back here. Just out of the way. Let's bring up SimBrief panel, one of the pop-ups, which allows us to fetch our plan. There's many places to see this plan, but I just quite like looking at it on here, to be honest with you. So there's the SimBrief panel plan. So departing from 08 with a north departure. So let's do that. Let's move this out of the way a little bit. So Bournemouth departure 08 north. And we're going no transition. Insert Manchester. Arrival. Elvos 1 mic into 5 right. 5 right. Elvos 1 mic. Insert. Check that for discontinuities. one just at the end. We're expecting that one. That looks good. Okay, so init page B is my responsibility. You'll see here init B and perf pages. So I've got to fill out the init B page. She has done the init A page for me. Flight levels put in, cost index is put in. She's grabbed the wins. Init page B, she leaves this bit here for the captain. So let's go to our mass and balance. Let's put these numbers in anyway for now. Send to McDo. So 53.7 from here, 29.4, block fuel of 4.8, which checks there. So that's good. So that's done for now. And we can do the final weights once we have them. Okay. Right, so at the moment, our first officer is doing a walk around. She's outside at the bottom there, you'll see in yellow, 273 seconds for walk around, hold, control and alt to skip. So that's the skip key I was talking about, and because I'm in VR, I can't see control and alt, so I put that onto a joystick button. So if I press that joystick button, I will skip that 260 second wait and she will come straight back in.
Aircraft looks good.
There we go. So she's getting on with the rest of the stuff now. Flight directors, setting the altitudes, vertical navigation, all of that stuff she's doing. There we go. You look, she's doing the altitude there. There's no SID here, so we're probably straight out to cruise. She's setting the QNH based on the actual weather. All good. Here we go. So this is a checklist.
Fuel 4823 kilograms. Check.
That's boarding complete.
On IOU. Nav. Barrow reference 1003. 1003. Checked. FMGS. Set. Briefing. Completed. Cockpit prep checklist complete.
So you'll see there, that was a checklist as opposed to a flow, so that will be read out, and then the captain will answer, which is what's just happened here, and now you'll see they've gone green. So we've done the cockpit prep flow, the cockpit prep checklist, and we're now waiting for the before start flow. We've had an ACARS message there which tells us that we're cleared to Manchester with a flight time of 55 minutes. 125 passengers, looks like only 121 have got on board. That ding we heard a moment ago there was from Fenix to GSX, just to tell us that the boarding is complete. I think we're done. Now let's just get our chart sorted out here. So we are arriving in Manchester, just to remind ourselves, in 05 right with an Elvos arrival. That's correct. So let's do the Manchester chart setup. ILS 05 right with a final transition. Add that to the route. And while we're in the Manchester charts, let's just grab the airport parking stand chart and pin that there as well. And we can now hide the charts. So one of the great things about Navigraph, as you'll know if you use it, you get all the charts pinned at the bottom there, which is such a great feature. Okay, here we are then in Bournemouth. We can zoom in there and see we're on stand 1. Expecting a 08 departure today, so the taxi is going to be Alpha to 08 and maybe a backtrack. So let's get ready for pushback, which is initiated by pressing this little int key down here, and that triggers the sequence for Fenix to GSX to begin the push.
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback.
And there you go. So our next flow is engine start, where the first officer will start both engines for us.
Departure checks completed. Bypass pin inserted. Locking gear.
So the eagle-eyed among you may spot that we have some different frequencies in front of us now. That's because Flight Sim decided to do a most bizarre crashed a desktop with a very odd error which I'd never seen before. So we've had to pick the flight up again. In the meanwhile, Solent Radar have come on, who cover Bournemouth, but rather than going through the whole thing with them again, we're just going to depart without being on VATSIM. So that's why you may see in front of you a slightly different frequency. So we need to decide where we're going. So pushing back, we're going to push south onto taxiway Charlie.
Release parking brakes, please.
Parking brake is released.
Commencing push.
And we can now do the engine start check.
Engines.
So you look down here, you'll see she switches it to start, and then
Starting engine 2.
engine 2 gets advanced. And she'll monitor the performance of the engine, and when that's spooled up nicely, she will commence engine 1 start. So you look over here, we see we've got left 76 seconds for engine 2 to fire. So it basically gives the engine enough time to spool up.
Ladies and gentlemen, please observe the cabin crew member closest to you as we are about to demonstrate the safety features of our Airbus A320 aircraft. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard our Airbus A320.
There's the push and engine start.
Started.
She will now start engine 1.
Starting engine 1.
And the
There we go, engine 1
if you hear brace,
starting.
brace. There are 8 emergency exits on this aircraft.
Please
Cabin
set
crew
parking
are now
brakes.
pointing out the exit nearest to you.
Parking brake is
Your
set.
nearest usable exit may be behind you. Emergency lighting will guide you to an exit. In an emergency, leave all baggage on board. Your seatbelt is fastened, adjusted, and released as shown. It must be fastened whenever the seat.
So we've got easterly wind at 9 knots, 090 degrees, 9 gusting 19, so pretty much straight down the runway.
Drop from above you. Pull a mask towards you to start the oxygen. Put the mask over your nose.
Engine 1 started.
Unlocking gear.
Hold the mask in place.
Good, everything going to
Pull on
plan.
each side to adjust.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass pin removed. Left is clear. Right is clear.
All engines stable.
Light and
Wait for him to do his signal.
attention. The cabin crew can assist you with life jackets for children. Your tray table
Then we'll do our after engine start flow.
open and seatbelt fastened. Further information regarding your safety on board can be found in the in-flight magazine. We hope you have a great flight.
Okay, that's cleared. He waves us off. Now we can go on to the next part.
Start flow.
Okay, so the after start flow, APU bleed, wing anti-ice, aux power unit nose light, flight deck lights, reset the rubber trim, set the flaps, which she has, I should say, to 1, MCDU 2 page.
Flow completed.
We need to sync the load sheet, send that.
After start checklist. Anti-ice. Set. ECAM status. Checked. Trim. Set. After start checklist complete.
Okay. Taxi flow.
Taxi flow. Clear on the right. Clear on the left. Flow completed.
And we'll have next the taxi checklist.
Taxi checklist. Flight control test.
Flight controls.
Down. Neutral. Up. Neutral.
I'm physically moving the yoke here, or the side
Right.
stick. And rudders.
Rudder full left. Rudder full right.
Now we can begin our
Brake
taxi.
test.
Brake test once we start rolling.
Checked. Flaps. Set. Speed brake. Armed. Radar.
Okay.
WS. Engine mode. Set. Ecam memo.
Takeoff no blue.
Taxi checklist complete.
Very good. So we can now taxi out via Alpha to the hold of 08. So I hope some of this has made sense as to how this all works in VR. Certainly a good setup as far as I'm concerned. It seems to do the job very well indeed. The note-taking capability of Open Kneeboard is an absolute killer feature, as well as the ability to show apps inside VR and interact with those apps. That really is quite awesome. And then this new program, First Officer, the Flight Sim First Officer, which I've been really enjoying. I've only had it a couple of weeks. Version 5's only just come out very recently. So it was a new program to me entirely, though it did exist in another form before. He's really worked hard on it. And as I say, he's one of the most responsive developers I've ever known in terms of fixing things and adding things. Like, for example, I've asked him to add the ability to put a text message in the checklist which reads something that I want them to read. So, for example, remember to set recording or remember to start streaming or anything you like. And then the Microsoft voice would read that out. So it acts as a reminder for me in VR, which is rather great. Let's just talk to the cabin crew here.
The cabin is now secure for takeoff.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're clear to enter 08. So we'll have our line-up flow. Landing lights will come on, runway turn-off lights come on, nose light to take off. All of that done for us. We're clear on the left. We're not on VATSIM at the moment. There's no controllers.
Take off runway.
08.
Confirm the runway, Captain.
Confirm the runway, Captain, certainly.
Confirm.
TCAS.
Set.
Tax.
Set.
Cabin crew prepare for takeoff.
Notified.
Line-up checklist complete.
Okay, we're ready to go on 08. So, spoilers are on, flaps are set, landing lights are on, we have a flex takeoff, and we're ready to go.
Man flex. SRS.
Thrust set. knots.
Checked.
V1, retain.
15-degree nose up.
Gear up.
Next thing we'll wait for is the acceleration height, and then she'll begin the acceleration flow. Follow the flight directors. we go.
Acceleration altitude.
Leave a climb.
Acceleration flow.
Autopilot.
Autopilot 1 on.
Okay, we can start cleaning up.
Flow completed.
So autopilot 1 is on. Thrust climb nav 29,000. It's coming to flap retraction speed now. Speed checked.
Flaps up.
And so nothing more will be needed from the first officer until we get to the descent flow, except that she will do at 10,000 feet the landing lights and nose light. Should do the transition altitude change to standard QNH. And remember, you can change all of this so that if you really want to do them yourself, you can do. It's a simple tick box, so it couldn't be simpler. So as we head out towards the SAM VOR, Southampton, on the airfield. There you go. Now she sets the barometers to standard. Very good. Now we turn towards the SAM VOR.
Ladies and gentlemen, please keep your seatbelt fastened whilst the seatbelt sign is on. We recommend.
So we'll get to 10,000 feet and let her get the landing lights done, and then we'll make a quick edit and miss out part of the journey so you can see what happens in the approach and landing phase of the flight, how everything ties together. Remember, this is not how to fly the Fenix Airbus, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's more about how it all works in VR.
We accept all major credit and debit cards. If we can be of any further assistance, just ask.
So look where we are. There we are now. An area of the world I know very well indeed, because bizarrely I actually got my pilot's license at Southampton Airport many years ago, and I trained in an aircraft called a Grumman AA5A Cheetah, which was a lovely little beast, and I was lucky enough to own an AA5A Cheetah much later on in life. Southampton Airfield was a nice place to learn, actually, because I'm from the Isle of Wight, or from Scotland, but then via the Isle of Wight, which is just to the south there. That's the Isle of Wight. And I was able to learn in Southampton and then go back to my old stomping ground on the Isle of Wight. There you go, landing lights off, nose light to off, runway turn-off lights to off. So she's done her job now. So we will let the aircraft continue its climb and go on its merry way, and we'll rejoin it a little later as we approach the top of descent. So we're just approaching Daventry now, flight level 290. We're back on VATSIM. There's a controller in Manchester now, so we'll continue the flight online. Here's our map from VSR, VATSIM radio. We can see our route there, and we can see that there are no controllers in this area, but as we go towards Manchester, Manchester ground will be on. We'll see him a little later when we get a little more in range. Okay, asking now for our destination data, as the Airbus does. So let's get our weather up for Manchester, which we can do here. EGCC weather. And we go to next phase, okay. So QNH is 1005, variable at 4 knots, so 1005, we'll put 360 at 4. Temperature is 9. And our barrow for an arrival to 05 right will be ILS 05 right 386. So our destination data is done. And we're just at the top of descent now. So Elvos, we can come down to flight level 80 by Dane. So I'm just dialing that down now.
Managed climb.
We're now in manage mode. And if you look here now, basically what the FSFO does is it draws a straight line between the two airfields. It doesn't take into consideration the SIDS and stars, so he's going to change that so that it puts a bit of a padding in either end so that it can warn you of the top of descent. So we're now going to do our descent flow. Auto brakes on low, seatbelt signs coming on.
Flow completed.
I've done that somewhat early, to be fair, but the poor passenger's going to be locked in. Let's just assume there's some turbulence. So the next thing we'll get is the approach checklist, followed by the landing checklist. That's the next thing we're looking for.
We will shortly be landing. Please ensure your cabin bag is safely stowed with your laptop inside. Your tray table.
So let's go to Unicom, Com1 active, done. So LVOS flight level 200, then to Dane 05, so we'll self-position onto 05 right. Looks like the Manchester controller logged off in the end, so nobody there. For those who haven't seen this before, VSR, VATSIM radio, no-brainer. It's free, and it changes the way you use VATSIM. It makes life so much easier. I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what this does, and he's adding to it all the time, so definitely one worth getting. So let's pretend we were given a clearance by VATSIM, just to show you the writing down stuff. So there's our departures. I'll move one along to get to our arrivals. So I'm now physically going to write on a tab as if the ATC had given us an actual clearance. So I'm going to go LVOS. That's an LVOS 1 mic. Into 05 right, and our clearance is down to flight level 80. By the way, my writing in the real world is appalling, let alone on a tablet, so do forgive me. I can read it. It's not the tablet's fault, it's mine, believe me. As we pass flight level 100, they'll put the landing lights on. In fact, the fasten seatbelts, I'm going to turn that off in the descent flow. That should really be part of the 10,000 feet flow. And as mentioned many times in this, everything is pretty much customizable in FSFO. So if I decide that I don't want the landing lights turned on as part of the descent flow, I simply turn that off in the setup program. So at Dane, we will self-position. We could do a place bearing distance waypoint. We could head on about 280. But I think we'll just put ourselves on a heading. So let's assume now we're given a direct to Dane. Cut the corner here. Direct to Dane. Done. There we are there. This guy behind us has also come from Bournemouth by the look of it. Yeah, Bournemouth to Manchester. I do like the Fenix, I must say. They're doing a great job in updating this aircraft. Landing's still a little bit weird for me. I haven't quite got used to the landing of this aircraft in FS2020. I either tend to float or lump it down a little hard. I certainly never had that problem with the toeless Airbuses in X-Plane 12. So I'm deciding it's not my fault and it's Flight Sim's fault. There we are, passing the buck. You'll notice, by the way, the first officer, as part of the descent checklist, has also switched on the landing system, the ILS bars, basically. That was part of that flow. We could have done that a lot lower. We've got auto brakes on low. Let's just check now, because we can. In the Phoenix, we should be absolutely fine. Landed at Manchester many times. Landing weight, good little tip here. Go to fuel prediction, add your 0 fuel weight to the ending fuel on board. So that makes it 58, exactly 59 tons. So we can put 59 tons in there. It's runway 05 right. We'll refresh the METAR, apply the METAR. Yeah, and that gives us a lot of leeway to play with. Nobody in Manchester, so interestingly, FSFO actually suggests as a gate. You'll see over here on the green at the bottom here, gate 107. So let's do that. Let's plan for gate 107. Let's assume that we were given that gate. So stand. Let me clear up this debris here. Stand number 107. And let's see where...
2,000 feet.
There we go. So landing lights coming on. Runway turn-off lights coming on, and the nose lights coming on. Seat belts already were on. So we'll change that for a future flight. So let's have a look here. Parking stands. 107. It's a long old taxi. It's there, in fact. Let's go for stand 51. It's a lot closer in. Don't want to be taxiing for the next 6 weeks. So I'm going to mark that. Stand 51. The 05 right, we'll have to cross and then taxi down Juliet, I would think. So we give them the change of stand. Now here we come at Dane. And we're going to go on a heading at Dane. Start off at 270. Those are wondering how I'm actually turning these knobs without the mouse. I have a Behringer X Touch mini controller, which is basically, for those who haven't seen it, look it up. It's a fascinating bit of kit, quite inexpensive actually, to be fair. 8 rotary controls, 16 buttons, switchable, so make it 16 controls and 32 buttons, and each of those can be assigned to things within Microsoft Flight Sim or X-Plane 12. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's not massively difficult. There's a lot of help out there that can get you going on it. But that means I can physically twist knobs. So let's change that heading, for example, now from 270 to about let's call it 230, which is a downwind leg. 230, there we go. So that's great to be able to actually twist the knobs. So those of you who are not in VR world, of course you've now got many choices in the Fenix, haven't you, with the new actual flight control units, which look wonderful, I must say. So 8,000, let's start our descent now. Just check the terrain clearance around here, because Manchester can be a bit tricky. We can safely come down to 4. Let's start our descent to 4,000 feet. So altitude, dialing back to 4, and we'll go on vertical speed.
Now be seated for landing. Thank you.
Let's go 1,000 feet a minute. Cabin.
Hi, Captain. The cabin is now secure for landing.
Very good. That's good. So we're coming down nicely. We'll now make sure that we are in approach mode. And we'll start slowing the aircraft down to 220 knots, I think. Pull. There we go. So let's have a look at the chart here. 05 right, we'll exit. We could go full length, to be fair, or we'll exit probably Victor Charlie. Taxi across and down to our stand. We'll just go past the final fix there, the closing fix, and then we'll go direct to make a nice smooth turn. So let's do that now. Direct, CFO5 right. That's a pretty nice turn. We'll insert that now.
Managed mode.
Increase the rate of descent slightly. Come back to 210 knots.
Transition altitude.
Checked.
Bit of drag. Looking good. We can drop flaps 1.
Flaps 1.
And we'll go now for approach checklist.
Approach checklist. Briefing.
Completed.
Barrow reference.
Checked.
Passenger signs.
On.
Minimums. 2, 0, 0.
Checked.
Auto brakes.
Set.
Engine mode.
Set.
Approach checklist complete.
QNH set. It didn't set it for some reason on the way down there, which is, I think I've reported that as a small bug. Normally the first officer would do that. Let's check the QNH here. 0 to a 5 actually. Okay. Let's go now to 180 knots manual. And we'll continue our descent to 3,000. Flaps 2.
Flaps 2.
Next checklist up is the landing checklist. Make a call on Unicon. Manchester traffic, Midland 84 Victor, just becoming established, 05 right at 10 miles. And we can arm the approach.
Managed climb. Approach mode on.
I was calling that managed climb, but it just means managed mode. He's going to fix that again in the next little fix, a minor detail. Let's slow to 160 knots. And we're at 8 miles. Let's configure early so you can see the landing stuff going on. So we'll drop the gear slightly earlier than we would normally.
Gear down.
We'll go flaps 3.
Flaps 3.
And we'll run the landing checklist.
Landing checklist. Barrow reference. 1, 0, 0, 5.
Checked.
Go around altitude.
Set.
Cabin crew. Cabin crew prepare for landing.
Okay, the go around altitude.
Memo. Speed brake armed.
Landing no.
Landing checklist complete.
Okay, landing checklist complete. We'll now go into manage speed. And we'll have full flaps.
Flaps 4.
I'm by no means an expert Airbus pilot, so forgive me any Airbus aficionados. Looking good. Perf page, VAP 133. Got a 7 knot wind from the right, so nothing to write home about.
Watch the airspeed.
Very funny. So a little dip there in the airspeed. Did you see that, the trend? Again, you can change how fussy the co-pilot is about those deviations from altitudes, airspeeds, taxi speeds, that kind of thing. That's a setting in the FSFO. Looking good. I think we'll add a couple of knots. 135.
And Manchester traffic 0163, Mike on a 10 mile final 05 left, number 2.
1000.
Manchester traffic, Midland 84 Victor, 3 miles now for 05 right. Okay. 1,000 feet. We'll disconnect the autopilot. Still playing with joystick sensitivities with
500.
this Airbus. I'm using a Warthog, a Thrustmaster Warthog joystick for this, for the Airbuses. Still getting used to it.
Approaching runway 05.
100 above.
Left 05. Right.
There we go, that's a RAS message from FSFO, yet another built-in bonus, which is an extra program you'd ordinarily have to buy, which gives you runway advisories.
100.
Okay.
50. 40. 30. 20. Retard. 5.
Slightly long. That's okay.
Manchester traffic, Virgin 79, pushing back, stand 210, Manchester.
Manual braking. 17 knots.
Very good. We'll get off the runway here, and we'll do our after landing flow.
Initiating after landing checks.
Manchester traffic, Midland 84 Victor is clear 05 right. Let's taxi down and
And
see if
Manchester
that...
traffic 0163, Mike is 2 mile final runway 05 left to land,
Ladies and
Manchester.
gentlemen, the cabin crew will shortly be leaving their
Midland 84 Victor will hold crossing the runway until you're down.
However,
Radar
we
Cheers.
ask you to
EWS.
remain seated
Off.
until
After
the
landing
fasten
checklist
seatbelt sign
complete.
has been switched off. Portable electronic devices for messaging, calls, or internet access may now be
In which case we'll taxi long to the end.
You take all your personal belongings with you, checking in the seat pocket, underneath the seat.
So she's done her
overhead locker.
after landing flow,
Do take
which is
care
rather
that
nice.
overhead
Saves us the
lockers
trouble.
and items may have
Things like the APU is on now, landing lights are off, runway turn-off lights are off.
until you reach a designated smoking area. On behalf of the captain and the crew, it has been our pleasure looking after you today. Our ground crew will help you
So let's ask GSX for... Just stop it here for a second. Not easy to taxi and look behind you at the same time. 205 feet a minute. I'm not obsessed with that kind of thing, but there we are. That's pretty good. So we're going to go for gate 51, we said. So gate... No, of course it's not available. Why would that be? Parking stands. Why is it not available? Previous page. Previous page. Yeah. All right, we'll go for gate 53. Who's arguing?
Approaching runway 2. 3.
The Manchester traffic 0163 Mike is vacated right 05 left at hotel. Will taxi Juliet, Papa and Delta to parking.
Very good. Always good to hear people making calls on Unicom with no controllers around. Very good practice. Okay, Hotel Zulu 1, which is there. We're going to cross hotel and pretty much straight across to 53. Manchester traffic, Midland 84 Victor, crossing 05 left at hotel for stand 53. Nothing there. He's clear. I've often wondered why the ground parking charts are not geo-referenced. You think they would be the most logical things to have geo-referenced as you're taxiing around, so it's a bit odd that they don't do that. However, let's just do a little piece of showing off here. We can look at another program to do that. We can look at, there we go, we can look at little nav map, for example, which will show us. So this is us looking now in little nav map, which is being shown in a window in open kneeboard, if that makes sense. And there's stand 53, so we're pretty much straight across.
Virgin 79, taxiing runway 05 left to Manchester.
Stand 53, there's 52, there's 53.
And sorry to the Virgin, would you mind just giving away to us? We're going to be coming up on your left to right onto Echo, just to taxi to parking down, further down.
Yeah, sure, we'll hold it. No, I'm Charlie 1 for you.
Thanks very much.
That'll do us. Parking brake on. And we'll now have our parking flow. Fuel pumps, engine switches, flight deck lights, beacon lights, wing lights, so everything being done by the first officer here. There go the engines. And here comes the jetway.
Cabin crew disarm doors.
So there we have it. That's our VR flight. I hope you enjoyed that and it gave you a little bit of insight into, there we are, a little insight into some of the programs I use in VR. Open kneeboard, the biggie, FSFO,
Parking brake.
fabulous.
Set.
Engines.
Off.
Wing lights.
Off.
Fuel pumps.
Off.
Parking checklist complete.
I'll be using that more and more as the weeks go on and adjusting my checklists and flows more and more to delineate, just kind of divvy out the duties between the pilot and the first officer a bit more. As I say, everything is pretty customizable. Thank you for watching. Hope it made some kind of sense. If you want any questions answered that were unclear, then please, by all means, leave a comment. Thank you, and see you again very, very soon.